Hello, welcome to Flypast. My name is Simon, and welcome now to the climax, basically, of the Battle of Waterloo. We have got to a stage. It's around about 6 o'clock in the evening, and we've talked about the Prussians pushing on to Napoleon's right flank, and how La Haye-Saint, the farmhouse that's been held all day long, eventually falls because of the lack of ammunition. And this is meaning that the French can now move light artillery and their skirmishers onto the ridge between La Haye-Saint and Hougoumont and start firing at these Allied squares. And we're in the Huey, and we're just circling around here now. We're going to come back to the center of Wellington's position. Now, this around about 6 o'clock is a significant time. You remember, this is the time when, if Napoleon had not got the pressure on his right-hand side, down here on out the left window here, he could have sent many more of his reserves, his Imperial Guard, up this slope to Wellington to attack. But because he's getting this pressure from Bulu's corps on his left, he's having to send his reserves prematurely to his right. And these are the Young Guard, and we mentioned that in the previous stream section. And so this means that there is essentially a time when they could have been moving up here to take advantage of the cavalry attacks that have been going on. They don't, so they don't manage to do it. Now, Wellington uses this time when Napoleon is distracted on his right flank to reorganize his line. He redistributes his artillery. We hear a lot of like Captain Mercer mentions him being moved into different parts of the line, and he manages to bring up some Brunswickers to fill in some gaps and plug his holes in his line at this time. And Muffling estimates, and remember, Muffling is the Prussian liaison officer with Wellington, and he says in his dispatches that he believed that Wellington's disposable force at this time had reduced to somewhere in the region of about 30 to 35,000 men, and remember he started off with around about 90,000. So Wellington is running short of reserves. And people have argued, if Napoleon had gone in then, right at that point, before Wellington could organise his line, then Napoleon might have won the day. But it's down here, precisely at that time, in this village here called Plancenoit, that the Prussians are starting to pressurise Napoleon's flank and rear. And eventually, the number of Prussians in this area below us becomes around about 2 corps strength, maybe a little less, because of the sort of wear and tear, and they're coming in kind of piecemeal, but they're building up, and the weight of numbers in this area just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. There's estimates by Seibel that there's probably almost 16,000 Prussians now on this side of the battlefield, and it's bringing in, and not only has Napoleon had to bring in his Young Guard to help Lebau's corps in this section, he's also now having to committed his 2 battalions of his Old Guard, the creme de la creme, in this area here. And every single soldier that Napoleon is sending into this part of the battlefield is one less that he's sending up towards Wellington. Now remember, at the same time as Bulu is coming over from here, this area here, and Perch's corps coming here, we've got on this side, up at where this dot is, the beginnings of Ziethen's corps arriving. Steinmetz was at the vanguard, and essentially he's managed to get his cavalry over to this area here, and that relieves Vivian's cavalry from defending this position on the Wellington's left flank, and they can go back across to help Wellington's centre. So the brigades of Vivian and Vandeleur are then moved from this left side here across to the centre. He brings up his Brunswick contingent. They are placed in reserve behind Maitland, basically plugging a line in the gap between Lambert and his guards. And it's believed that Wellington personally leads these Brunswickers forwards to the crest of the ridge. Now, it's believed Wellington sends a guy called Fremantle across to this left-hand side. We'll just circle around to that to hurry these Prussians along. And Vivian receives this order, but he said he says he got it around about 6:45. So this is the crunch time here in the sense below us. Vivian's going to come across from this point here. He already says that before he got the order, he'd already came to the same conclusion that he had to come across, because more and more Prussians are appearing on his left-hand side. And he describes the scene at this moment. He says, "We arrived most opportunely at the instant Bonaparte made his last and most desperate effort. Never did I witness anything so terrific. The ground actually covered with dead and dying, cannon shots and shells flying thicker than I have ever heard even musketry before, and our troops, some of them, giving way." Lieutenant Colonel Murray, he was of the 18th Hussars, so they tend to be the sort of troops that would be flanking troops. He describes that he moved from the left to the centre at this time. He describes the reduced state of Somerset and Ponsonby's cavalry brigades in the centre. He describes wounded or mutilated horses wandered or turned in circles. The noise was deafening, and the air of ruin and desolation that prevailed wherever the eye could reach gave no inspiration of victory. And that was a letter that he wrote about 10 years later in 1835. Some of these Brunswickers that were brought in, they actually did break, but they were essentially prevented from leaving the battlefield by Vivian's cavalry. So the cavalry is moving across from here behind Wellington's positions, and they're basically stopping the trying to stop the infantry from abandoning the field. And they say that Wellington tried to bring them back forwards, and he placed them in an area behind, essentially behind the ridge, behind La Haye Sainte, around about here, just outside of the effective musketry fire. Now there's reports of remember Ortega's brigades and Kilman's and Zeger's brigades. They've broken in this area. They had started to reorganize themselves on the eastern side of the battlefield, out of further range, so presumably in this area back here somewhere. And at the moment, this time, so we're talking 6:30, 6:45, 7 o'clock, the Wellington's trying to organise his troops. We talked about him getting his guards into line. They're trying to force these tirailleurs, pesky skirmishers that are occupying the ridge now, and they're being able to take shots at his troops, and they're trying to sort of force these tirailleurs back off this the ridge. That then allows them, his gunners, then to man their pieces, and would allow them then to delay or push back some of the artillery and infantry. Reports here at this time as well is that, remember, the Prince of Orange had ordered Ortega forwards, and he had gone even though Ortega had told him that there was French cavalry in the area, but he now is involved in rallying some Nassers, and he leads them forward on the eastern side, and it's during this motion of bringing them forwards, they broke again, and it's during this time that the Prince of Orange receives a musket ball in the left shoulder, knocks him off his horse, and this is what this big mound of dirt represents. It's the Prince of Orange is getting shot in the shoulder, so we can assume that is the site of where he got injured at this time. And the Prince of Orange is carried off the field, and the Nassers, who had broken, they were caught up by the Allied cavalry line and were brought forward once again when there was a break in some of the pressure that the French were producing. So the Prince of Orange isn't seriously wounded, and in fact he would attend a ball within a few days of the battle. So at this time there's a slight break in the action. This allows Wellington to reorganize his batteries, so resupply his ammunition. The 95th Rifles, they begin to clean their rifles, and then they start themselves harassing the French sharpshooters in La Haye-Sainte, and this is when Chassé's division is brought up and placed in the line. And back here, this is the Boîte aux Soignes. There's reports here of people who have fled the battlefield come into these woods. They actually start cooking and soup and things like that in the relative safety. And the road to Brussels is described as this is by a guy called Lieutenant Wyndham. He was from the Scots Greys. He says, "The road was one varied scene from the time I left the village of Waterloo until I arrived at Brussels. Men, women and children were ridden over by the runaway Belgians and a few of our own people. Baggage wagons, guns, etc. lying in the middle of the road." So there's a sort of... Remember, this is also the time where the Duke of Cumberland has ridden off the battlefield because he believes that he's... the battle's lost. The Prussians and their initial thoughts, Ziethen's, remember Ziethen's chief of staff, Reich, he believes that the battle is lost. It looks like Wellington's losing this position here. There's a lot of desertion going on, fleeing the battlefield, panic setting in. The Duke of Cumberland actually rides off the battlefield, goes back to Brussels, and tells everybody in Brussels that the battle is lost. So at this point, it's not looking great. But so there's a sort of a slight sort of I don't know, prejudice against some of these Belgium units, but some of the Dutch units, chasses, nassers, they're newly arrived from across from Braine Alert. They actually perform very, very well, and they have during the whole of the battle campaign, the Waterloo campaign. They did perform well at Quatre Bras, and they were performing well here. And they had done a sterling defense as well down at the Hougoumont. Let's just pause here, jump out. So, in this area now, what we have, so basically between La Haye-Sainte and Hougoumont, this is going to be the scene of the heaviest fighting and the hardest fighting, essentially, of the day. We have... starting on this sort of eastern side, there's Optaker's King's German Legion on this side, followed by Kilsmegger's Hanoverian Brigade. You got Cruiser's Nassau's, and then you have, excuse me, 4 Brunswick battalions, Dijkma's Dutch Belgian Brigade, Colin Hackett's reduced British Brigade. So in this area here stands 6 brigades of infantry, and the 2 original batteries in this area has now been increased to 5. So all in all, and there's more troops here than has been stationed here at any part of the battle. So further west then we have Maitland's Guards, Adams' Brigade of Fresh Light Infantry, 2 battalions of fragile Brunswickers held together by the continued presence of essentially Mercer's Royal Horse Artillery. And then the line kind of bends essentially down to Hougoumont here. So Wellington also, he's brought over Vivian and Vandeleur's cavalry, as I said. They've come across from the left-hand side, and he's stationed them basically behind here. And to prevent, to hold the line and prevent it from crumbling. Now, I don't know what time it is, but around about this time, it's reported that a deserting cavalry officer would ride up here and reports to Wellington that he basically says, "Get ready. That scoundrel Napoleon will be upon you with his guard in less than half an hour." Now, by 7 o'clock, it's believed Cyborn has got essentially 49,000 Prussians and 123 guns have arrived on the field by 7 p.m. This is a number that Wellington will dispute later. He says it over. It gives the Prussians too much influence on the battlefield. But if it's true, and we mentioned 16,000 before, anywhere between 16,000 and 49,000, there is still a significant amount of troops coming over from this side at this time, and it's about 7 p.m. Now, Major General Sir Hussey Vivian, he wrote to Cyborn, commentating on the Prussians at the time, and he said the fact that was, after the attack of the Prussians, theirs might almost be called the general action. Fighting had in a great degree ceased along our line, excepting on one front, i.e. the attack of the Imperial Guard, so that the Prussian army must of course cut a conspicuous figure at the moment chosen for representation on the model. So yeah, he sort of hints there that the action has narrowed to a very small part of Wellington's line because of the significant impact of the Prussians on this side of the battlefield. And Major General Sir Hussey Vivian, now remember, he's the guy who was over here and brings his cavalry around to Wellington. So he's obviously in a good position to understand the amount of Prussians that were coming across this side of the battlefield. He goes on to say, we were greatly indebted to the Prussians, and it was their coming on the right and rear of Napoleon that gave us the victory at Waterloo. And it's my personal theory, or having looked at this a lot, that essentially Wellington ensures that there could not be a French victory at Waterloo, but the Prussians ensure that there would be an Allied victory, and that's how I like to look at it. So without Wellington here, then Napoleon would have won. But without the Prussians, then the Allies wouldn't have won, if you get my drift. Right, so we shall leave it here. We'll take a quick break. The time is at 7 o'clock in the evening. It's the 18th of June, and we are approaching the famous march of the Old Guard up to this position, essentially behind this panorama of the Battle of Waterloo, and we shall discuss that in the next part. If you've liked what you've heard, then please give a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you in a moment.